All right, you guys, I know we'll continue to have people pile on in, but we'll go ahead and get on started. I'm excited to have you guys here today. I'm excited to do this class with you. I'm excited to be in your presence and talk about surprise and delight. I'm Kate Stedman. I'm the Director of Agent Development here. You guys know how we do it at Choice. We are all about bringing you classes and trainings that empower you in your business. And when there is something that one agent is doing that we think we could all benefit from, and they are open to sharing it, then we absolutely want to share that with the world, because the better we can all be, then the better served our clients will be as well. So that said, I think we could all use a little more surprise and delight in our own lives. And if we translate that into our client experience, not only is that so empowering and makes it so much more special, but it also just makes that process so much more smooth, and it has the opportunity for more referrals down the road. So I'm excited for us to talk about that today. Plus, who doesn't want to be made to feel special? So we're going to be discussing a lot. Libby Azzarello is the one bringing this to us. It was a class that she wrote some time ago, and we've talked about it a number of times. Every time we talk about it, I get more excited to hear what she has to say. And the reason I'm so excited is because we have kind of a template for things, but it's also personalized to you and your client experience, while also kind of reading the room and seeing what your clients' reactions are and kind of pivoting from there to continue to hone in on that. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Libby is a recent addition to the Choice family. She's been licensed for about 6 years. She is an absolute rock star agent. She's the founder and owner of Bumble Brews off of Oberlin. It is a community-centered space, so be sure to pop by and see her. She's in the space occasionally as well. She has experience working at Disney weddings, which is one of the things that kind of inspired this class, and it's one of the things that she will talk about today. And she is one of those people that when she walks in a room, she just lights it up, and she is energetic, contagious. Can't wait to continue to chat with you. So I'll let you take it from here. But Libby, thank you so much for sharing. And thanks to you guys for showing up today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. And thank y'all so much for joining me. I'm really excited to share about kind of my experience. And this specifically has completely changed my business in both for my clients and for me, because a lot of times real estate can kind of feel heavy and maybe like a drag for both your clients and you. So surprise and delight is something that I love to do for my clients both during and after the transaction. And it has roots in the hospitality industry. So it might not seem like the perfect fit, and it might sound kind of fluffy, especially knowing that it came from Disney. But huge brands like Ritz-Carlton and Disney focus on this so intensely that Ritz-Carlton has a $2,000 budget per visitor, per employee every single day to do these little surprise and delight moments. So if it's working for the big brands, it can work for us in our everyday. So a little background about me. As Kate mentioned, I began my career at Disney Weddings, and that was one of the most customer service heavy teams within a very customer service forward company. So if you can imagine, there are lots of expectations, lots of emotion, and a big financial investment involved in where I started my career. And that sounds a little like something else that we all know and love, but I did not connect real estate to weddings in my mind until much later. But at Disney, we were trained in a program called Traditions. So we were taught all about the history of Disney. What happens if a kid drops their ice cream cone? We have a budget to go buy them another one. There's no questions asked. That's just what you do. If you overhear that somebody's favorite character is Tinkerbell, that works its way all the way back to the resort where they're staying. And suddenly there's Tinkerbell wings on their bed. It doesn't happen for everybody, which we'll talk about why that's important in just a minute. But that kind of thing was ingrained into me in an early part of my career. So it's just kind of carried through and become second nature. After I worked at Disney, I moved into a marketing role with an experiential marketing agency. And what that was is they created what they called activations at places like state fairs and NASCAR races. And it gave consumers a chance to interact with the brand firsthand and get an experience and make their own memories. So instead of watching a commercial or reading an article, they actually got to play games and have a human experience and talk to people. And that created an emotional experience, which was so much more impactful for the brand down the line. I don't know if I should watch the chat. Oh, yay. Okay. Oh my
You're
God.
good. Brian's just saying how
So
excited he is.
exciting.
I'll kind of monitor the chat. I'll chime in if needed, but we'll kind of wait
Okay.
to ask questions at the end. Keep your flow. You're doing
Perfect.
great.
Okay. So yes, giddy is a great word to describe it. And we'll talk about a lot of the strategic side of it. But as of now, we'll just start with the feel good stuff. After I left that experiential marketing agency, I went on to work for the MLS in DC in a role that I came to describe as a professional care bear. They changed our name a million times. They had one of those funky names like customer lover. I don't know. It was something crazy. And I just ended up calling myself a professional care bear. And our MLS spanned 3 different states. So people had a tendency to feel left out and excluded. Y'all know how hard it is to deal with this transition that we're doing right now with the MLS. So my job was to go into people's offices to just pop in randomly, stop in, say hi, make them feel like a part of the organization, and answer their questions and solve their unique problems. So again, it was about creating a human, personalized, customized experience that made us as a company different and stand out and made them want to be members. So I did not connect all of my past experience with events and weddings and marketing until recently. I was on a podcast and the host kind of did the work for me. She was so interested in just how I explained my marketing and how different it was because I, as you might be able to tell, get excited about things, get easily distracted. So I had to build a business that worked for me so that it would be sustainable. So I was just explaining my business and, kind of how it started. And she was the one who connected all the way back to the hospitality industry and to my background in weddings. And from there, I dove back into hospitality and I researched how they used surprise and delight. I came across the crazy Ritz-Carlton statistic. Fun fact, one of their employees actually flew with a briefcase that somebody needed for a business meeting that they left behind. Like that's the level of memory that this person's going to have of Ritz-Carlton. And I came across a quote that if y'all have seen The Bear, the TV show, it's phenomenal if you have not seen it, but it's about a restaurant and it was inspired by this book called Unreasonable Hospitality. So I reread that book and I employed so many of their tactics as I was preparing to talk to you guys today. And one of my favorite quotes from that book is that service is black and white and hospitality is color. So I'm going to actually read this part of it. Black and white means that you're doing your job with competence and efficiency. And color means that you make people feel great about the job that you're doing for them. So I think that part is so important because as agents, we often work so hard and a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. So on a bad day, it could seem thankless or frustrating or, a lot of, again, what you do goes unnoticed. So I think hospitality gives people a warm, fuzzy feeling, which is reciprocated and makes you have a more sustainable business overall. Uh-oh. So what is surprise and delight? I'm going to break up this definition into 3 parts. And the first part is perceived value. So it has to be an item of perceived value. And the important word here is perceived because value is going to be different for every single person. And when this can go wrong is when you think you've delivered something valuable and you're super excited about it, but it's not received in the way that you hope. It doesn't come across and give you that benefit of loyalty. So what we'll talk about a little bit later is how to know your audience and what makes them tick, and then deliver value to those people. And we're going to find people that you love spending time with and that clients that you want to copy and paste, and then how to replicate them by using this tactic. The most important part is that it has to be delivered unexpectedly. And we'll talk more about that later and how that impacts satisfaction versus delight, how impactful delight is, and things like that. And most also importantly, it has to be delivered with no strings attached. Often in real estate, we do things like pop buys or closing gifts, and they might have our logo on them. I've been known to deliver a little seed packet that says, "Thanks for helping my business grow." And inadvertently, over time, I've learned to kind of shift that and just focus on the client and have no business stationery, no logo, nothing, and create a more organic, authentic friendship than just saying, here's a string attached. If you refer my business, or thank you for referring my business, all kinds of things like that. You want to be seen as a great person who happens to be a realtor. It's most impactful outside of the traditional real estate experience. So we'll chat about ways to make your process fantastic and delightful. But something I think agents kind of struggle with is how to reach people after they've bought a house. We can send market reports, we can, focus on their home anniversaries or birthdays, but this particular brand of marketing really helps you reach people organically years after they've bought the house. Authentic and personalized are two other key components. It has to be authentic both to you and to them, and it should be personalized. So another thing that Disney was famous for is researching the number of kids somebody had, the time of year that they liked to visit Disney, and their favorite character. And they would make these customized videos that they would deliver to the guest, and they would be shocked and awed, and that's something that you really talk about. Ritz-Carlton actually goes in during housekeeping sessions and looks at the temperature that a room is set at. If a guest has made any changes to the room, so if they've moved the desk closer to the window or whatever, they have a record of all of these things that they do without being told the next time someone visits. So the personalization is another thing that really sets this apart, and delivered to the right audience. So not only does it need to be the right person, it needs to be the right size audience. We're going to do this for such a small group that it's going to make you feel very uncomfortable. You're going to feel like, hey, I need to do this for everyone. That's what I'm told. And in reality, it's most impactful and sustainable when you focus on a small group. So we're not big like Ritz-Carlton. We won't have that, return effect that they do, but it will be just as impactful in our business. This I thought was super interesting. I heard this in a podcast, and a common misconception is that outrage and delight are opposites, and that dissatisfaction and satisfaction are opposites. And that is not really the case. It's more of a scale. So it goes from outrage to dissatisfaction to satisfaction and then to delight. As you can see, the two ends of the spectrum are unexpected, and that is what takes people off guard. Outrage, as I'm sure we've all experienced, is something that will stick in somebody's brain specifically and forever. Delight does the same thing because they reach the emotional center of your brain. But delight is the only thing as agents and people that we can control. We cannot control the process. We cannot control outrage. We can't control if a builder has a delay or if rates change before they lock in their mortgage rate. Whatever the case may be, we cannot control outrage or dissatisfaction, the two bad ends of the spectrum. When people feel outrage, why it's so emotional for them is that they might be feeling other things too. They might be feeling embarrassed. They might be feeling shocked. They have to process so many different emotions that it has no choice but to stick in their brain forever and be talked about. Dissatisfaction is what I just call an air of yuckiness. Like, you can't really remember why you didn't like that experience or that restaurant, but it was just like, oh, like, I think of this when people say buying a house is hard. Like, oh, good luck. Like, whatever. Like, it's just a bad experience. And that could be something that's expected, of course, like, oh, it's expensive. You have to pay closing costs. Well, duh. Sellers being unreasonable. That's what they're going to remember. And something that I always repeat to myself when I'm panicking about like a dissatisfied customer is it's not my fault, but it's my problem. So I have to solve this problem, but I didn't cause it. However, in the memory, you are related to the experience, so they are dissatisfied with both you and the situation. Satisfaction is positive and expected. So that's the black and white that we talked about earlier. It's fine, it's great, good, but it's nothing special. And a common misconception here is that satisfied customers are loyal customers, and that is not the case. So a satisfied customer, to come back multiple times, you have to work really hard. You have to catch them at just the right time when they're about to make a referral. You have to stay in touch with them, market to them way at a higher cost, and work a lot harder to keep them in your sphere. However, a delighted customer, again, they have you stored in their emotional center of their brain with such a great experience that they have no choice but to remember you and to refer you. So loyalty comes with delight, but not necessarily satisfaction. Satisfaction is just fine. It's great. It's a good place to land, but we also want to make sure that we put some delight in there when we can. So that might seem kind of confusing, satisfaction versus delight. But if you think about the fact that once they are satisfied, they've reached peak loyalty. So think about closing day. Everything went fine. You closed on time. They got a closing gift, which was expected. Sometimes closing gifts can be seen as delightful if they're very personalized and unexpected. However, most of the time, people go into it expecting a gift, expecting to close on time, and you reach that satisfied point. And from there, you have to work really hard to, as I said, get them to refer you, get them to use you again. And they've kind of reached the top of their loyalty. But the addition of delight, which, as I mentioned, we can incorporate way, way after closing day, exponentially increases loyalty. And the way to get from satisfaction to delight is surprise. So as I said, it may sound kind of silly. We're not popping out of birthday cakes at people, but surprising is just out of the ordinary. It's that customization. It's when Elle would, and she says, I just think it gives it a little something extra. It's just a little something extra that somebody else may or may not be doing. As we mentioned too, delight reaches the emotional center of the brain, so it is statistically more memorable. The same goes with outrage. Those are two ends of the spectrum that you will absolutely hear about. The way that I think about surprise versus delight is, or satisfaction versus delight, is like when you walk into your hotel room, satisfaction is, yep, housekeeping cleaned up my room, they made my bed. Delight is when you walk in and there's like a little towel monkey wearing your glasses and it's just so kooky you can't handle it. Or if y'all are Spotify users, you log into Spotify and you expect to be able to play music. You're satisfied, you can play music, but when they've curated and customized a special playlist somehow with AI bots for the time of day and exactly what you want to hear, that's stinking delightful. And those are the type of things, when Spotify started doing that, I'm like, take my data, take whatever you want. This is just charming. I don't care. And that's really the loyalty that you want. I don't use any other platform because they don't do that. So as I've started talking about these types of experiences, we are told as agents to focus on pop buys or, things creative, unique marketing. And I have tried it all, and y'all will see that later. I've skinned my knees a lot, and I figured out what works best, both for me to keep up and maintain and increase loyalty, but also that really impacts my customers. So they tell you to focus on holidays and birthdays, to have client appreciation events, which can go both ways, and we'll chat about that in a second, to do it across the board and for everyone, and that closing day will last forever in their minds. However, holidays and birthdays are flooded with other noise. They're getting birthday emails from John Heister Chevrolet. European Wax Studio is wishing them a happy International Women's Month. Like, they are getting inundated with other messages on these big holidays. So in order to be surprising, therefore delightful, you have to find other opportunities to reach your people. Client appreciation events, if done well, can be fantastic. They can really reach your folks, but they can also be overwhelming and intimidating. So if somebody invited me personally to like a cocktail party in the evening with 70 people I didn't know, I would probably sit in the fetal position in my car and like weep. But if they said, hey, I rented out this movie theater, bring your kid, sit in the dark, watch a movie, have a snack on me, and like have a great night, I would feel seen and heard. I would feel like that was such a great idea. And that's just for me particularly. I know some people are social, some people are different. And that's why it's so important to know your ideal client. The impact is relying on a small group and customizing it for them. So there's a study done where rats, they were studying dopamine in rats, and their dopamine, their joy hormone, shot up when there was a chance at receiving something. So that's that surprise again. If everyone always gets the same thing, it's not surprising. And that trap is that it falls into satisfaction. And that's what you don't want. When you work really hard to make something special and it just ends up being expected or satisfied, that's where you start to get burnt out and you get frustrated with your business, or you don't want to do this anymore. And frankly, if we're being honest, on closing day, they've kind of moved on. So if y'all have ever tried to get one last signature on like the mineral and oil rights disclosure after closing day, you know you cannot get through to the people that you spent like 3 months obsessed with. They've moved on. They're moving Pop's bed into the guest room. They're mentally painting. They're dealing with movers. There's a great opportunity to come back to them later, but on closing day, when you've presented them this really special gift that you worked very hard on, it might not reach them the same way as it would if it came at a different time. So very fluffy term, very serious numbers. Just a 5% increase in loyalty. This slide is going to be very boring. I apologize, but I wanted to show some of the punch that it could pack. Can increase your profit anywhere from 25% to 85%. This one is my favorite, especially for real estate, is that delighted and loyal customers have a lifetime value equal to 11 regular customers. So that is why it's so important to, as silly as it sounds, delight these people, because it makes your job easier. Not only are you working with people that you love working with, you're doing fun things for them. Like, what, you can't lose. Let me do this real quick. 41% of satisfied customers would refer a company again. This is a JD Power study, and 61% of those who were delighted would. This one is interesting because it shows the full span of dissatisfaction to delight. And this was a Mercedes-Benz study on if people would buy or lease with their brand. And a dissatisfied customer had a 10% return rate, 29% for satisfied, and 86% for delighted customers. So again, if the only thing that you have to do to get from satisfied to delight is a little bit of a surprise, I think it's worth it. And here's a statistic that we are probably unfortunately familiar with, and that is 88% of people would use their agent again, they say, probably on the high of closing day, and only 12 to 17% actually do. On the flip side, the Disney return rate for first-time guests is 70%. So these little silly goose moments make such a huge impact that we can't help but want to do them ourselves. Another way that I think of surprise and delight and satisfaction is when you're telling a joke. And one of the most delightful moments is when you hear a really silly, unexpected punchline. If you hear kind of a dad joke, I love a dad joke, as you'll see later. But if you're expecting the punchline and if you're anticipating it, you're like, give me a break. But if it's something that is unexpected and really makes you laugh, you will probably tell that joke to many, many more people. So that's another great way to think about it. So as agents, I think this is kind of hard for us because I believe we have a little bit of an identity crisis. So we don't really know what we are. So it makes it really, really hard to keep in touch with people in an organic way after closing. We are sometimes referred to as salespeople or service providers, but we are not typical of either of those industries. I think real estate is too big of a purchase to be considered sales. It is not just something that you purchase, every week at the grocery store. It's not something you purchase even every 2 years for most people. You have to rely on a different type of relationship to be trusted with this purchase. We are also kind of service providers, but if we're also being honest with ourselves, no one calls up their dentist crying in the middle of the night. Nobody corners their attorney at a party and asks them for advice. We are treated very differently, so we have to act as unique as we are. The interesting thing throughout the transaction is that people treat us very, very differently. They treat us like marriage counselors, like therapists. We know their intimate hopes and dreams for their future. They walk into a house and they tell you how many babies they want to have and what they think they're going to do on the porch and how they don't have any friends and they want to meet friends in the neighborhood. All of these things are very personal and they are so important to be held and remembered and thought of and integrated into this process. So what should we be? If we think of ourselves as friends and hosts, so going back to that hospitality vibe, all we have to do to be successful is to celebrate, commiserate, and be a part of their daily life, and to make others feel welcome, comfortable, and valued. That sounds a lot more fun to me than knocking on a stranger's door and telling them how much their house is worth. Those things all have a time and place, but this is such a different type of marketing, and that's why it's so much more impactful. So again, our goal is to avoid feeling salesy, and that's what a lot of times I think we struggle with after the transaction. Okay, I had this great experience with this person, but now I won't see them for another 6 years. What is that about? Obviously, you can spend time with them and they might send you referrals and things like that. But one of the biggest hurdles that we have to get over is feeling salesy. So whenever I am feeling slow or frustrated with real estate, I always ask, who could I help? And that can be as easy as delivering a meal to, a new baby, a family that just had a baby, or going to meet a neighbor, or helping out. My gym is under construction and they need people to just come tape and paint and things like that. So what I like to think of myself is, if I were a dentist, I would want people to know me as a person first, and then be like, there is nobody else I would rather give me a root canal. They would meet me, they would know me, they would love me, and then they'd be like, oh, dang, yeah, she also does this. That is how you become a friend and stay engaged in their full life. So again, no strings attached, just saying, hey, I'm a helpful person and I help in all of these different ways. Oh, you need your walls painted? I actually have a painter. Things like that can be delightful and unexpected. Again, reaching people organically outside the sales cycle, and giving feels good. A lot of times in real estate, especially in times like this, we are perceived as kind of yucky. We feel yucky. The news is against us. The mortgage is kind of against us, doing weird things. So giving feels good. And it's important for you to have a business that you feel happy in as well. So this is just a feel-good way to do it. It's on the way to reaching that organic and authentic feel that cannot be ignored. So what we're aiming for is in the middle: sustainable, authentic, memorable, and organic. So you have to look at both who you are and who they are. So if you only do things for your clients, it's not going to feel organic. Like if I took everyone to a baseball game, I would be sweaty and hungry and angry and like just eating Dippin' Dots and not focusing on anything else. However, if I just gave everybody a manicure gift card, that would fall on, deaf ears for a lot of my clients. So you have to look at who you are and who they are, because if you only do things that don't appeal to you, then it won't be sustainable. It can create burnout if you feel frustrated, and it won't be memorable if you don't have the them aspect. And if you do neither of these, it won't be organic. So a very important question that I have to sit down with myself and ask often: is it what you want to give, or is it what they want to receive? I will show you guys many times where I have failed, and it honestly has led to frustration, but then clarity. One such story: I moved here to Fuquay in 2021, and we had a 6-month-old baby at the time. We were not expecting to move. We just randomly found this house, as realtors do. And it was also, of course, somehow my best year yet in real estate. So every time that I did client appreciation events or gifts, I always did them at Christmas. And this year, because I'm insane, I decided to get in my car with my baby and drive to every transaction that I had in the 4 years before that of my business. Strike one, because that was already something that I didn't want to do or didn't have the capacity to do, but fine. I decided to make these precious little cookies. I didn't make them, I bought them. They were very expensive. I'll show y'all a picture, but they had the client's address on them on a little front door. And I thought that they were the cutest things I had ever seen. I couldn't get over the little numbers. I was so excited. I was thrilled. I couldn't wait to see what people thought of them. After day 2, I started to realize only like 2 or 3 people were actually expressing delight. I barely even got a thank you, which is not the goal, but like, did you receive the cookies or did a feral raccoon steal them? I had no clue. I only got like acknowledgement, I would say, from maybe 3 or 4 people. And I looked at my list and I had probably 30 or 40 houses left to deliver. I used this software that Amazon uses, like truck drivers, to map out my route from like Zebulon to Wake Forest. Like, it was insane. And I realized, okay, looking at this list, there are probably only like 3 or 4 more people on here that will actually receive this in the way that I hope. So is it really worth it to drive to Nightdale for like, a single dude that would probably rather me send someone over to mow his lawn? So I sat there in my car and I ate all of the remaining cookies because that's what made me happy in the moment. And I knew that I would continue to get burnout. I would not be a good person, mom, realtor, anything, person moving, unpacking, if A, I didn't eat the cookies, and B, if I spent 3 more days in my car. So that driving in the car, the bitterness, the annoyance is not the goal of this. You want to find the people that receive what you're given. So this is kind of crazy. This is just an example of the evolution of what I have done in the past. And as you can tell, my first few years, I had a lot of time on my hands. In the top corner, I mailed out boxes of cookies for people to decorate. And I did make these. This was pre-COVID when people were still eating other people's food. But like, and you can see the string attached here. I said, if you know someone looking for a unicorn, like, give them my number. I'm wishing you a lot of luck. That one's kind of cute. But again, people like, it didn't really have the impact that I hoped. And I spent a lot on stamps and mailing them all out. These are the cookies. So as you can tell, the recurring theme here is there's one person in almost every one of these pictures. I took these from social media this morning. She shared on social media over and over. All of these came from 3 people. And that is why it's so important to pick the people that will receive what you want to give. And there's no wrong way to do it. There's nothing wrong about jiving with the people that you're working with. The bottom left-hand corner is the result of me going into the post office and asking them with my adult voice if I could mail fireworks. And they said no. So I had to pivot and I said, have a really great summer. I hope to catch up with you soon. So the dad jokes were real. Lots of my hands. I'm so grateful for you, handmade bread. Like, you can see I worked very hard. And so you can understand for somebody who's level 10 excited about everything that I was disappointed and burnt out when these things didn't work in the way that I hoped. This example was during the height of COVID, and it was a very competitive situation to purchase this house. And my clients were not necessarily the most qualified, but somehow, not me, the clients were alerted that my client's daughter said she wanted a house where she could raise her unicorns and fish. And that was actually the reason why they got the house, because everybody was feeling some kind of way emotional during COVID. These clients had such a tough experience, and the other agent knew that. So I got the daughter a unicorn for the house at closing. So it tied everything together. And I still talk to that client to this day, because of the emotional impact that that had. This is another example of something super simple. And now we're going to dial it back from all the insane tactics that I did on the last slide. It does not have to be expensive. It does not have to cost a thing. I keep $5 Starbucks gift cards in my car, in my wallet, and in my desk at home. And I just mail them out. I like to do what I call taking the online offline. So if I see somebody got a job promotion or moved, not moved to a new house, we're not celebrating that, had a baby or whatever, I take it offline and I say, hey, I saw that you did this. Congratulations. So in this example, I just sent her a $5 Starbucks gift card. I wrote it on personal stationery, so I didn't use my branded stationery. And I followed up with a happy birthday, which, here nor there. And as you can see, the next thing was a referral. So happy New Year. I would love to take care of your referral. But nothing in there was asking for business, feeling salesy, or anything like that. I just noticed a change in their life. And change often preempts real estate transactions. So we're kind of sneakily doing the thing, but it doesn't feel like that. This one hurt. This one hurt a little bit. On the left is an example of when this worked really, really well for me. And on the right is when it did not. So these clients were December of 2020. I remember that very emotionally because 2020 December was just yucky anyway. But these clients had a situation with their buyer who was purchasing their house, and that stopped them from being able to purchase their dream house for a time. We worked it out, but it was one of those situations where everything was out of our control. And they ended up having to stay in a hotel room, and all they kept saying was that they ate Cheesecake Factory when they felt stressed out. Like, I just kept hearing that randomly, or like, I need to go to the mall, or whatever. So I was listening, and I eventually decided to deliver Cheesecake Factory to the hotel where they were staying. And that hit all kinds of emotional centers because I listened for it. And then it came somewhere where they were not expecting it. After the transaction, they drove to my house. They gave me clothes for my baby. They were actually one of the first people to find out that I was pregnant at that time, first clients. And they actually gave me a crystal ball, because so many times during the transaction, I said, I do not have a crystal ball. I do not have a crystal ball. So they gave me one. And I thought that we were friends for life. They weren't necessarily my target client. They were a referral. We were in different stages of life. It's not who I would normally target or market to. But I thought that we had cemented our relationship. Unfortunately, what I think happened is they looked at that transaction with overall dissatisfaction due to things that were out of my control. So even though I did all of these special things in the moment, I never heard from them again. And that's not to say that they might pop up later, but here's an example of where I gave them something else later and no reply. So it just goes to show how special these moments are in the moment and how memorable they are. And if you ever try to replicate that at a time where it might be expected, this was at Christmas, it didn't hit them the same way as it did that first time. So in order to make this impactful and make it actually work for you, you have to right size your love list. So this is going to be very different from your database. As I said, it's probably going to be 5 people, maybe a quarter or something like that. But I promise if you choose the right people and you really narrow down, the impact that you see will make you realize that you want to do this more. And as you get used to it, you'll be able to streamline it and make it more impactful. Once you know their nature, you can create organic opportunities to share. So once you know the type of people that will share or the type of people that will refer you, as you saw on that slide, it was 3 people who kept sharing my name over and over, then you will have more opportunities and more ideas to share. You have to simplify this in order to make it work. So you have to simplify other areas of your business in order to do this fun stuff. If you're only doing the fun stuff and the transaction goes off the rail, then that's also not going to be very satisfactory. So you have to start small and you have to simplify so that this can make a big impact. And of course, we're not ignoring everyone else. This is simply just an avenue of marketing that will really help you after the transaction. When you're thinking about these people, you can think about who you could eat lunch with. So lunch is kind of a boring meal. And if you think about someone you have great conversation with, somebody that you organically jive with and that matches your energy, that's the type of person that you want to create these moments for. If somebody has sent you 2 or more referrals in the last year, that is someone worth investigating, asking yourself, does our energy match? Do we vibe? Would they receive the types of things that I enjoy giving? That might be worth investigating. If you either have not done a lot of transactions or you've worked with some duds, you can reverse engineer this and make it so that you picture the characteristics and the likes and dislikes of your ideal client, and then kind of find them and delight them there. The important thing to note is that these do not have to be people that you've worked with before. These can be friends, these can be people new to the area. Creating delightful moments connects them to you, even if they haven't done business with you. The easiest way to find these moments is to focus on what you see and hear to make them feel seen and heard. That is what will really set this apart and cement you in their memory. And that's when, Spotify, for instance, as I said before, they can see what I'm doing. They can, follow my trends. They can track my preferences and likes and dislikes. And then I'm like wowed because they listened, because they felt seen and heard. So because we are not typically seen as touchy-feely, emotional professionals all the time, it's going to be extra special for them to create that relationship with you. To identify milestones, think about your ideal client and some of the other things that they might be dealing with. For me, I tend to work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and I reevaluated that a couple years ago, and I was like, nope, I still love doing this. Because first of all, I love the training and teaching and coaching. That's a gift that I love to give, and I find that they receive it so well, and you can kind of mold them as you move forward. The other thing that I love about them is that they're always doing stuff. They're always hanging out with friends, the young, energetic things. They are having babies. They are getting new jobs. They are, on social media, all types of things like that make them perfect candidates. I have go-to gifts for people who have new babies. And when people, when they move and, things like that. So I've systematized signature gifts because I know those people. So every time somebody has a baby, I have the stuff ready to go. If you work with somebody who is downsizing, or if the person that you would like to work with is going to be an empty nester, what types of things, what other things should you look for so that you can make this unique and special to them? There's a lot of emotion involved in all of these types of situations. So figuring out how to do that is super important. Oops. Looking at the entire real estate transaction from the moment you meet someone is another way to kind of fine tune your day-to-day process and make it stand out even before, the end of the transaction. So I like to think of things that are itchy. So what isn't really bad, but what's annoying, or what has the potential to be dissatisfactory or just satisfactory? And how can I take that moment and make it extra special? So where I look at this is inspections. I find inspection negotiations are more emotional sometimes than original negotiations, because you're kind of stuck as a buyer, and as a seller, people are telling you what's wrong with your favorite place. So their emotions are high. It's just kind of itchy. Like, it has the potential to go either way. So that's a great time to celebrate. Hey, we made it through due diligence or something like that. Getting pre-approved is a big step. And what I found there early in my career is I was often losing people. They would get pre-approved and then they would kind of, disappear for a little while, and then they would come back. And I started celebrating them getting pre-approved, and that made it such a celebratory emotional step that emotion pushed a lot of people through to start actually house hunting, because they felt positive. And it is a huge milestone. It is a huge job. So when are things quiet, and what needs celebrating? Processes can also be surprising and delighting, because as we've seen throughout all of these lawsuits, there are a lot of ding-dong agents out there, and no choice agents are ding-dong agents, but we can set ourselves apart just by doing things a little bit differently. So this is a long one, and I will share this slide afterward so you guys can kind of keep track of it and share some of your own ideas. But as I said, this does not have to be expensive. This does not have to be the $2,000 a day like Ritz-Carlton. One of the best opportunities for surprise and delight is to set thorough expectations. So I have a special sheet within my buyer packet, and it is called Great Expectations. And it goes over everything that has ever gone wrong in a transaction for me. December 2020 is absolutely in here. And what I find that does is it makes it easier for me to delight later, because nobody is outraged. Nobody is caught off guard by the fact that due diligence is non-refundable. Nobody is outraged by the fact that the buyer has 7 days to wiggle back and forth on a deal. So if you can remove outrage by setting thorough expectations, that's free 99. It's a good practice to have. And it's a great way to increase delight. You can even just take a photo at closing. I find having photos printed is something that people rarely do anymore. So if it's a new construction, you can take photos throughout, have it printed and sent to them randomly, or send them a picture of their house when they first bought it a couple of years later and say, oh my gosh, look how much has changed. You took that tree down. Many of our clients have businesses of their own. And what I like to do is refer their business and then tell them about it. So I will refer, their tax services, and then I'll say, hey, I sent someone your way. And that is delightful to them. It shows that, you are a business person. It kind of ticks that point in your brain. Solving a specific problem in a unique way. Nothing can get more personal than that. Everybody's problems seem very big to them. So if you, at closing or after closing, you send them the name of a painter 3 weeks after closing because you remember that they wanted to paint that part of their house. Little things that you've remembered will be delightful because you remembered them and you saw and heard and made them feel seen and heard. I have 2 clients, actually the ones that shared my delightful moments in the past slide, who love Wegmans and Harry Potter. And every time I see a Wegmans, I text them. Every time I see Harry Potter, I text them, whether it's a license plate or whether it's, there's one neighborhood, I think in Apex, all the streets are named after Harry Potter characters. And she lost her entire cranium. She wanted to go visit immediately. She was so excited. So even just driving through and saying, hey, I was thinking about you, that is a delightful moment because we are not thought of as friends at this time. Another client, I was driving through her neighborhood and I literally just said, hi, I'm thinking of you. And she said, I need you. I was like, huh, I like to hear that. She needed a referral for an HVAC contractor. But just me saying I was thinking about you created this whole chain of professional events. So, being a resource is a great thing, to be and to be seen as. And your vendor list. So a delightful way that I like to kind of change my vendor list is to make it very personal. So if I share things like I'm 5'1", I have a favorite tailor, vet, sushi, whatever you love and they love, incorporating those things into your vendor list. I like to send my vendor list at random times too. And I only put people on there that I have used personally and that I utterly love and irrevocably recommend. And that is one way I find I stay in touch with my clients all the time. And it's just delightful. Everybody, my response that I always get when I say, yeah, I have that guy, they go, you have a guy for everything. 3 or 4 people said that the other week. And it makes me feel so good because that is something that you can work on even when you're not in the middle of a transaction. With my buyer and seller presentations, as I said, I go to the Elle Woods School of Marketing, give it a little something extra. I have just a plastic folder with a snap because I realized people always had a bunch of stuff, like they had receipts, they wanted to save stuff that I had given them, they had notes, they had everything else. So I watched a transaction unfold and I just gave them something where they could store safely their items. I also include koozies. The first time I meet people, no strings attached. They do say home sold, drink cold, and have my logo on them, but it is a little something extra in the moment. And another way that I've anticipated seller needs, I found these little notepads, and it says now, later, and eventually. Because I find that sellers always want to know what to do and they always want to know what to expect next. So these little notes, they can take things you have to do now, later, and then things you have to do way down the line. One of my biggest business practices is I say that I have systematized things so much and I make things so easy for my clients that they can have fun throughout the transaction. I want to have fun and I want them to have fun. I often do paper plates and cups and utensils, either for people's moves or when they've had a baby, because those are 2 times when you can't find your stuff or you literally can't find your stuff, like you're freaking out. You don't want to be doing dishes or anything like that. I've also paired this with a pizza gift card. A couple days, like I ask them when they're moving because a lot of times people aren't moving right away. And then I'll send it at that point and it'll show up randomly. I've even ordered people pizza. I talked about this on the podcast and the host was like, well, what if they're against paper plates and, they're big environmental people? And I was telling her that that's why it's so important to do this for the right people, because some people might be offended. Some people might not eat cheese, things like that. You have to know. When my now husband met my dad for the first time, my dad doesn't drink. And my husband had thought and worked and came up with this sweet plan when he met my dad to give him a bottle of wine. And it was such an amazing gesture. It was so sweet. And my dad didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was like, oops, I should have connected that. So a lot of people choose to do a survey or something to make it foolproof for you when you want to do these things. The 2 easiest people to delight are dogs and kids. I always bring, I have custom coloring sheets, which I need to get printed. I'll send those out to show y'all. And I have little packs of crayons and I bring them with me the first time I meet a client that I know has kids, because not only does it take the stress off the parents so that they can focus, the kids feel seen and heard. It's got a little scavenger hunt of things that they can find within the house, and all kinds of things like that. A map of North Carolina. I also always ask, if I hear somebody asking for a yard or a fence, I ask about their pet, because I know most of my clients have and love their dogs. And so I always get the dog's name, and I will sometimes do a little dog tag with their updated information on it. Or I have a guide and it says, how to look for poisonous plants in your new backyard, reminder to update the chip in your pet, all types of things like that. How to transfer your vet records, vet recommendations, because people love their kids and their fur kids. So even if you don't necessarily feel like you're wowing your client, by association, by loving the people or animals that they love, you are communicating that to them. I also love to bring coffee to a showing or closing day. You can have them write something cute on the cup. People are very particular about their coffee, so I do always ask if they even drink coffee, or even just saying, I'm headed to the inspection, what can I bring you, is a super unexpected and delightful moment. I mentioned client appreciation events before. One of my favorites that really resonates with my particular audience are family and pet photo sessions. So I had a photographer come to a Christmas tree farm, and everybody had a slot. It was during COVID, but also that's how I would love to attend an event. I got to see everybody. They got something of value. I could see it on their Christmas card. Every time they had their Christmas card, they thought of me, but there was no string attached. I invited people that were and were not clients. Somebody in our group posted recently asking about a gift for an investor. And I find sellers and investors are very hard to impress, because a lot of times they're either mentally moving on or they're not as emotional because it's an investment. So focusing on things like lawn services, home warranties, painters, all things like that that really are applicable to them. And it's hard because having a plumber fix something for them is not cute or pretty or like glittery for Instagram, but it will stick in their mind and it will be the thing that makes them refer you. Specific and fun events. So these are things that I could invite people to that were or were not past clients. One of my favorite ones was margaritas and home maintenance. So I had the home aspect kind of brought in, but we learned how to patch a hole in a wall. I had one of my contractors come. I had an inspector come, and I had all different types of margaritas, and all of my friends moved around to different stations. And they got to meet some of my vendors. We got to learn, if you drop your ring down the sink, they showed us how to like undo the sink and like get something out that you dropped. And different things like that. And like people were very invested. And again, people that I had never done business with will still remember that event. Other things like paint your house event and things like that. There are soft ways to remind people what you do without having those strings attached. So as I mentioned before, I have very strict processes in place because that is not my nature. I want to have fun all the time and I want to be able to do these fun things. But if the train, as Walt says, is going off the tracks, then that is what they will remember instead of the things that I want them to do. Furthermore, if I create these magical moments once, it's great for that person or that experience. But if I get burnt out and I never do it again, or if I get busy and I never keep up this type of marketing, it's going to lose its sparkle. So as we've talked about, Disney has the legendary customer service, and Walt Disney thought of his process like a railroad engine. And to me, process kind of sounds like a plumber. Like it's just not sassy and fun and cute, but it is the most important part to make any of this work. So if it does not run properly, if your business does not run properly, no one is going to be able to focus or think about these other events. These are just a couple of examples. This is the last slide about some ideas on how to keep it going and how to make this more systematized so that it can feel more organic. And that sounds counterintuitive. You don't really think of rules and, regulations, but these are ways that I help things seem organic. And I'm happy to help y'all with any of these if they sound helpful. I have perpetual calendar alerts on my phone for every single year. And I have them for new construction, when people reach their 1 year and their warranty is about to run out. I have them for good and bad things. So if somebody has a loss in their family, I keep that on my calendar because I don't want to wake up that morning and tell them that I stepped in dog poop on the day that they lost their beloved family member. You can also set up reminders that will appear when you're texting a certain person. So if it's their birthday, the reminder will pop up before you send them a text message. I have, as I'm sure many of y'all do too, email templates during the transaction so that the work is done and they can focus on the fun part. I also schedule emails to be sent after the transaction so that I don't have to rely on my memory. Again, kind of that, check-in type stuff. And truly, people will appreciate it. I do a lot of new construction, knowing that they should schedule another inspection, potentially to get the most out of their 1-year warranty. I keep things on hand, as I mentioned. I have note cards in my car, in my purse, and at my house. I have little $5 gift cards in each place. And I find that it's super helpful for me to have things where I need them. So if I'm at the park and I meet another mom, I can go to my car and grab a koozie. Or I also keep stamps in my wallet. So if I read something or hear something, I'll write a note right then and drop it in the mail, just so that it's top of mind. So keeping things on hand is one of the best ways to make sure that this actually happens. Many people, as I said, do surveys and they ask you what your favorite drink is, when's your anniversary. I keep what I call my serial killer notes, where when I'm doing my presentations, I just write like golden retriever, May wedding, engaged, whatever the case may be. Not super helpful, but that's the idea. So like a client preference notebook. And another thing that I find helpful is to map your transactions after you're done so that you can find clusters. One of my favorite things to do is if I have, some time and I'm in a certain neighborhood, I pull up and see, okay, there's 4 people around here. And I think back to my experience, are they the right, type person, whatever. And then I'll go grab a local ice cream gift card or something. And I was telling Kate, I actually had a listing presentation a week ago for one such client. I was in their neighborhood. I went and just got a little ice cream gift card. I got a photo of them eating the ice cream afterward. And then I got a listing call a couple months later. So that is kind of in action how it works. And these things are what I do to make sure that it actually happens, because you will want it to happen once you see how powerful it can be for your business. So that is all I have. I can look at the chat if anybody has questions. Oh, yay.
Oh, that was so wonderful, Libby, and so inspiring. I'm going to open it up for questions in just a minute, but I did want to point out a few things. If any of you follow me on Instagram, I was at a conference the past few days, and honestly, there were a good number of sessions that I walked into and just left feeling incredibly annoyed, especially in this type of position where I love talking with agents about what to do in your business and what will be received by the clients. And I think so often, especially in our industry, people are so fast to get up in front of you and tell you, you need to do this and you need to do this, and that's what will be successful. And those can all be great things to do, but A, will it resonate with you and your business? Will it resonate with your clients? And if you go to enough of those, gosh, you'll leave feeling like you've just got a million things that you have to do, and how do you find time to do it? And so I love conversations like this because they are authentic to you and they are exciting and they are sustainable. And I think so often, like, what we are learning these days is less is actually more. And it's nice to see something so tangible. The other thing I wanted to point out, though, is you talking about all of this. I know you mentioned it a number of times. Like, I love a client preference notebook. That's such a great idea. Also, just as you're doing this, though, a friendly reminder, you have to have somewhere that you can circle back to these notes, whether this is your CRM and you just have a pinned note at the top. That's what I do. Whether you guys know it or not, as we're talking, I have a little note about you guys in your background because it matters, right? But you have to make sure that you know where you put those notes. So whatever that system looks like for you, make sure that you're implementing that. But these are such great ideas, and I love all of them. Do any of you want to share any thoughts or questions, or maybe even some examples that she said that maybe resonated either with Disney or Ritz-Carlton?
Oh, thanks, guys, for all the nice messages.
We'll
As
stick
you can
around for
tell, I can
just a
talk about this for days. So if anybody has, I have a lot of like little technical tweaks that I do in my phone and calendar and stuff like that to keep track of and, remember. So if there's ever anything I can do to help, I'm always happy to.
awesome. Thanks, you guys. We'll sit around for just a few minutes, but thank you for coming today.
Awesome. Oh, how fun is this? I want to save the chat.
Exactly.
I'm delighted.